I worked in the student employment office career center for the entire time that I went to Pepperdine. I think even when I studied abroad in Florence, I did some help getting people student jobs and getting them the I-9s and everything together while I was there. So the entire 4 years I held a student employment job there. So I'm pretty sure that that experience, it being very similar to HR, if not HR itself, is what kind of helped me be able to get internships in the field that I'm in now. Because while working there, I got to go to a lot of the events that were put on in the Career Center, one being a conversation that was held with the HR manager at Fox. And I will never forget that event because I sat in the back to wait for a friend who was going to be late. And at the end, when we were all sharing our resumes with Kristen, who was the person who came from Fox, she actually called me out for sitting in the back. And so we had an entire conversation about why I was back there. And from that point, she took my resume and I actually got an internship for the intern program to be her kind of mentee at Fox. And so that's kind of how I got my foot in the door in entertainment, was a event from the Career Center. And I think it's pretty simple, the entertainment industry. Once you're in, you're in. So that internship kind of spiraled into helping me get a post-graduation internship at Disney. And then from Disney, which was after graduation. So I think that's also a fun thing, is I was one of those people who was not employed directly after graduation. I think I went a good 3 months trying to find work. And Disney is one of the really cool places where 3 to 6 months, I think, after graduation, they still have internship programs, which is not common in the entertainment industry. Typically, you have to be registered at a university or a college in order to be an intern. So Disney really saved me. And then after Disney, I applied for my first full-time job at A&E Networks. So the people who give us Lifetime, the History Channel. And then I worked there for about a year exactly. I did interview at Netflix prior to applying for A&E, went through the entire interview process. This was when Netflix was a lot smaller. They had an office in Beverly Hills, which was one floor of a building. Now we have, I think, multiple offices in Hollywood that are multiple floors. So it was very small, very different. I made it through the interview process and they said, "You're great. We're really excited about you, but not yet." Netflix is very much the kind of place where they want you to be sure. They want to make sure that you have the experience so that you know where you're going. And I was coming off of a lot of internships, but internships weren't giving me exactly what they thought I needed, just because when you have an internship, you spend a few months at a place. So you never really get to dig down and see what that place is about. You never really get to find what you like and don't like, because you get the best that that place has to offer, but you don't get in the nitty gritty. So they wanted me to get more business acumen, and they said they'd stay in touch, which I thought was a lie, because that's not typically something people do. And so exactly a year later, they actually did reach out after I got the experience they said that they would like me to get. And the rest is history. So after that interview that I had at Netflix a year after I had got full-time experience, I had an interview. About a week later, they brought me in. And then 2 days after that, I had an offer to join the talent acquisition team as a talent coordinator. And I have been there for about 2.5 years since. And that's the journey.
Awesome. No, thank you. Oh, I love that they followed up, that they had that relationship with you, which is so huge. And we talk about that all the time at the Pepperdine Career Center, how, again, this isn't just how impressive is your resume, but who are you? What's your identity? What's your relationship? You don't work for a company, you work with people. I think that's clutch. So Shelby, you were also a Pepperdine alum, but coming from a totally different field. How did you find your way to Netflix?
All right, it's been quite the journey, but I'm so happy that I'm here. And Will and I are actually on the exact same team, which is so great to have two Pepperdine alum on the same team. So very excited about that. I am a Pepperdine baby. My mother and my grandfather both worked at Pepperdine, so Pepperdine has just always been in my blood. So decided to go there. be a PR major. I actually worked, like Will said, at Pepperdine, both as a student worker, and then after I graduated a couple years after, I worked in human resources and HR for 2 years. Special shout out to Seaver College and George Pepperdine College Alumni Affairs. I was their intern for about a year, and that was a great experience in event planning that helped me land another internship at IMAX. So that was my first introduction into entertainment. After graduation, I was like most people, searching for a job all summer, couldn't find anything that would land, and had a family friend say, oh, can you cover someone's maternity leave at this school that I work at as a front desk receptionist? So I did that right out of college the summer after. And after that, they did not come back from maternity leave. So I stuck around a bit longer. But the drive started to get to me, and I didn't really want to be a school receptionist for much longer. So started working at a rehab facility in Malibu, Cliffside, Malibu. There are a few other alum that work there. So that experience really taught me patience, dealing with difficult personalities. And then after that, I came to Pepperdine to work in HR as the learning and engagement specialist. So didn't have much interaction with students, unfortunately, but worked with faculty and staff, providing professional development workshops and employee engagement events. And then, so fast forward 2 years, I just I've always loved entertainment. I did theater in high school, but never thought I was going to be an actress or anything. So I'm like, if I can't do what I love professionally, I'm going to work in that field. So I, thought about my network, have a family friend who worked at Netflix, so chatted with her for a bit. And she said, did you know Will Lawson? I think he went to Pepperdine around the same time as you. And I was like, yeah, I think we did NSO together. So Will and I connected and just chatted for a bit. And after that, I just had different conversations with recruiter at Netflix, and they said, actually, we have a spot open on the team that Will is on. Would you be interested in interviewing for that? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'm there. And things moved pretty quickly after that, and I've been at Netflix for about 7 months and loved every minute of it. But Pepperdine really helped me to grow professionally, to be able to set me up for success there, because after college I didn't have the traditional track in entertainment. I was in it for a bit and then dipped out and went into higher education, but was able to circle back.
That's wonderful. And again, I love the relationship piece. I love that you have these waves and these friendships. So how did you and Will first meet? Do you remember your?
And we were both in NSO together as leaders.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Which again, so all of us, as we're looking at careers prospects, thinking about who we did NSO with, who did Songfest with, all those people that you work with, made friends with, those very often become your career trajectory. So both of you have found your way to Netflix. You're now on the same team. So to kick things off, tell us, for all of us who just binge watch Netflix religiously, give us a look on the inside. What's working at Netflix really like? What would surprise us?
So I don't know if anyone has the opportunity to look at our culture memo, but Netflix has a very specific culture for our employees. It is all about freedom and responsibility, giving feedback in the moment. So I read through that in preparation for my interview, and they said all of these great things. And I was like, there's no way. It's too good to be true. I don't understand how a place could function without strict hierarchy. And so as I got there and I went through the interview process, spoke to a few people, kind of poked holes, asked questions, I was like, oh, wait, I think this is kind of real. And then you get to Netflix and then you're fully immersed in the culture. And I think that that's what works for us. Will, I'm sure you could speak more to the culture at Netflix, but I think that that is what makes us successful. We don't stick to, this is how a company is supposed to be. This is, we're going to model after, other entertainment companies and tech companies. We kind of broke the mold and made it work for us specifically.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think that a part of the reason that Netflix is, I think, so successful is because it's very much everyone is themselves. I think that that's what pretty much works is we want people to come and be able to fully be themselves as long as it's something that's inclusive of everyone that you're working with. So Shelby and I are very much, especially if you ask our team, able to show up and have our witty banter and be able to joke around, but also be very efficient and able to produce good work. And I think the one thing that we try to tell candidates too, because I think a lot of people are always like, what is it really this way? Like, what do you mean? There's no way it can be like that. It's just a place where you're treated as an adult. And I think that that's the craziest thing to think about when you're an adult working in the real world is that there is a difference between a company that treats you like you're an adult and then a company. And I think that giving us the freedom and responsibility to make our own decisions, as long as they are what's best for Netflix, is really great. I think that that's one of the things that kind of helps us to be able to drive and is happy and makes us happy to come to work every day is that we know that as long as we're putting out good work and fulfilling our goal as a company, then the way the work gets done doesn't matter. Where it gets done from doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so I think that that is something that really is sets us apart and makes us kind of like really happy to work there is because we know that we can show up, be ourselves, produce great work, and then go off into the world and do our thing.
Yeah, and I love that. And so both of you just hit on something huge. Netflix was very much not just an innovator in entertainment and entertainment delivery. You were an innovator in people. What you're both referring to, that changing culture, I'm sure the two of you are well aware, but for everybody else, if you're not filled in, so when Netflix got going, they brought on a chief HR person who had been friends with some of the founders and done previous companies named Patty McCord. And Patty McCord pinned the first, you can Google this, the Netflix culture doc. And in that, she said, like, man, if I could start from the ground up and said, if I just want to make a company where people are allowed to be the best and the brightest they possibly can be, what would that look like? What if we, did away with some of the non-load bearing structures we have in organizations and said, what do people really need? And Netflix said, okay, let's go for it. And they began exploring those new systems. And so that defined not just Netflix, that defined Google, it defined Apple. It has now defined all of the tech startups. All the way that they do talent and culture was defined by the community that the two of you are a part of and the heritage that you're in. So yes, for everybody else, if you want to go Google Patty McCord, but for Will and for Shelby, so as you guys look to the future, is the way that Netflix is doing work, do you think that's something that is going to expand out to more companies outside of entertainment, outside of tech, especially given the change in our current circumstance?
I hope so. I think that it will be great to be that way. I know I think Netflix is just a part of like how Patty and how Reed and Ted, who's also in our leadership, more so on the content side. I think one of the things that kind of sets us apart is people over process is something that we really drive. So that means that things are always going to change based on the situation and based on the person. I think even specifically for Shelby and I on our team is very candidate centric. So we are, being a part of talent, a lot of data is involved, a lot of numbers, but that is usually to help us tell a story, but it isn't the driving factor. So it's based on the individual that we're working with and what they need. And we do have a process. Sometimes we do have things that we need to do, but that bends and we flex to try to make sure that the individual candidate feels supported. And I think that the same thing is extended to us as employees. And I think that that's one thing I hope, especially given this pandemic and how it's impacting both the tech and the entertainment side of the industry and just every industry in general, that we do look to employees as people more so than just someone who's helping drive the company. And I think that that's something that people, especially everyone on this call who's looking for jobs, is going to probably be interested in as they interview is, how companies treated employees during this time.
Mhm.
And so I think I hope it's something that does change.
Mm.
Yeah, that would be a great question to ask during your interviews as you guys start to interview in the workforce. I think that this is just a great example of how a company can show up, how they show up in crisis, what their priorities are, and how they're taking care of their people. I think that Netflix's response has just been so incredible and encouraging during this. It's been very, take care of your families. The service still needs to run. But we want to make sure that you're okay. It's all right if you want to take these meetings off of your calendar. It's okay if you need to take a couple of days off to focus on your children. It's all right if kids are running in the background during your meetings, if the dog needs to sit on your lap. They have just been so, I think that our culture has been able to thrive in this experience because Will and I do have the opportunity to work from home as needed. And so I think that a lot of us were equipped for this process of working at home. So I think we were set up in a good way. It's a very large company, and the majority of us are working from home right now. And the fact that we are still running well, the site has not crashed. It just really shows how our process has been implemented and just showing it how it is thriving during this difficult time.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we love hearing the people side of that. So for those of us on this call who are looking at Netflix or companies like Netflix as, maybe that's a part of my future. What can they be doing right now during this pandemic in terms of reaching out, building relationships with these companies, whether they're, hiring or not? What steps should they be taking?
I think my biggest suggestion would be to really research the company, ask specific questions if you're reaching out to a recruiter to make a connection. I think that some people have the impulse to say, "Hi, I'm this person. I'm graduating. I'm really interested in working at your company." And so when you are receiving that on the other end, you're like, "Oh, that's great. I was very interested in working at this company too, but like, what questions do you have? Why are you so interested in working at ethics?" Like, really dig in. And also patience. Just like Will mentioned, right out of college, it's really difficult to land a position at Netflix just because we want you to come in with this experience of working at a company full time. Not only just to have more full-time experience under your belt, but I know personally, coming from working at multiple places full-time, arriving at Netflix, I have more of appreciation for the culture and can really understand if this is a culture that I believe in and that I can thrive in.
Great.
I think Shelby answered that perfectly, so I have nothing to add to that but a +1.
That's great. Excellent. But yes, that journey, like neither one of you went straight to Netflix. Netflix is really cool. We all know about it. It seems to be doing really well right now. But it took you a few steps to get there. Will, I know that you had reached out to them a year ahead of time, but when both of you were in school, when you were graduating, was this like the company that you had in your crosshairs, or at what point did it solidify for you? Did it really click? Like, okay, this is the company, and I know that because.
So it is very interesting because I don't think that it was always in my crosshairs. And also I feel like I am seeing the Pepperdine thread even more as I speak in these conversations, because I actually did the career coaching program through the Career Center, and my mentor was Dorothy Hammond, who at the time was an HR manager for Live Nation when she was my mentor, and I had no idea I wanted to do HR. She actually left Live Nation to join Netflix as an HR manager. So that's how I first heard about Netflix and gained interest. And that was right around the time graduation was happening. So that was when I was talking to her about the culture. She obviously knew my history and thought that I would be a good fit, but she was like, I'm going to warn you ahead of time that typically people don't get work at Netflix straight from school, just because they really want to make sure that you are aware of what a job feels like and what the hierarchy feels like at other companies. So when you come into the culture, you're aware of what you like, what you don't like, and you're prepared. So I think for me, that's what started the journey. I've always loved entertainment, so I knew I was going to be in entertainment regardless. I think jumping into streaming, I just was very intrigued because I think that was around the time House of Cards was probably the only thing that Netflix was really known for. Like they didn't have the slate that they have now. So I think it was more of the culture. Just looking at the memo, they were very upfront. Like when you read the culture memo, it is very upfront. It tells you everything that the company is. And I think that when you read it, you either have two reactions. You either have like all right, this is a lot, or you have this is a lot, but I like it. And so I think for me, I was the latter. And so I really wanted to see if it was really that way. And just knowing people who work there, it's kind of like, like if you can work there and we're friends and I like it, I feel like I could probably work there. And I think that that's kind of what built it. And then after being there for so long and seeing our slate and seeing the work that we do, I was like, well, this isn't half bad.
Wonderful. So what from your Pepperdine experiences do you think you've carried with you to Netflix and has been the most valuable?
I think one thing that's been really great, especially as Netflix is growing, is my opportunity to study abroad. I think that the global perspective and kind of diving in and understanding that really helps as Netflix is becoming global. We're not just Americans making contents for Americans, but then Italians also choose to watch our American content. We're really growing across the globe, and people are making content and empowering these creators to make content for their specific region. And we've just seen how, others are kind of attracted to the content that's global. We have a lot of content coming out of Spain that people just love globally. So I just really love that it's telling different stories. And I think that my experience abroad really it brought me out of my shell and brought me out of this is America, and everyone kind of tries to adapt to like what we do and like our culture. And it just, breaks that ignorance that a lot of us have about content creation.
That's awesome. That's great. A good nod to the IP program. We love that.
Yes, love IP.
That's so Pepperdine. I love it. Will, how about you?
Yes, shout out to Florence. Love that place. Can't wait for the day we're finally allowed back. But I think that it's pretty similar. I think the abroad program definitely helps. I know it's so cheesy, but everything that IP says about it, when you go abroad, you do grow and learn. I think there's just something about being there and traveling alone for the most part. Like you're there with everyone that's in your house or the villa or wherever you're going to be, and you do have a support system, but like you're out there making decisions on your own and seeing the world from a new lens. So I think that definitely builds something in you that you bring back to be more aware, to be more compassionate, and I think that all adds to really what the core of Netflix's kind of culture memo is. But I also think that that Pepperdine in itself is just it's pretty diverse in a lot of ways, and so you just learn how to interact with so many different people, so many different perspectives. I think working at Netflix also helps too, because I think that the work that you do there, it isn't. I feel like the vibe of the work you do at Pepperdine, it's still also very people-centric. I think that's the way that I think the Church of Christ influence, as well as it being a university, you're looking to help people. It's not just furthering an agenda, for lack of a better word. And so that helps you to be the type of person who's looking to help people, and it's people first. And I think that that's definitely something that you take with you, is wanting to sit down and help someone get somewhere. It's just probably why Shelby and I are on this call now, because we just have that feeling of like wanting to get people further. And I think for me, that's always been the case, just because I know that Pepperdine is definitely a place where I see people who want to jump out into these careers, but it's not always the first place that employers look. And so when I see people who are interested, it's nice to be able to help them get there.
Excellent. So we're about half an hour in, and I want to, and thank you so much for that, Will. You are correct. But before we move on, I just want to remind everybody, if you have additional questions as we're diving into all this, for Will and for Shelby, please put those in the chat. You can either put them in open, or you can send them to Molly Fitzpatrick, and we'll help get those to Will and to Shelby. And we're going to transition to more of a Q&A as we have a conversation. Will, I especially love everything you're saying about the culture, and especially, okay, so Pepperdine, it's a top 50 university. It's sort of one of a kind in IP and in community and in experience, but in a way it is kind of isolated here in Malibu. So how do we, from this excellent thing that we all know is excellent and is amazing, and as you guys know, you're out there at one of the world's top companies, one of the world's top brands, and you're working side by side with people from any background you can think of, and your colleagues, your peers. You're on that level. So how would a student or a graduate of Pepperdine, how would they get on the radar at a company like Netflix?
I really think that it just comes with trying to figure out, like, early on, like, where you're going to intern. I think it comes with, like, previous experience. Like, it doesn't have to be like the perfect trajectory. It doesn't have to be in the area that you necessarily want to get into, but I think it helps to have some previous experience working somewhere. Like, I think one thing that I've realized, and I think that people are in the industry, whatever industry that's going to be, but entertainment specifically, is navigating that it's a very specific group of people that have the privilege to work in entertainment consistently throughout their career. So it makes the pool of people, of candidates that you can draw from, very small. And I think that also when you look at the fact that companies have so many inclusion and diversity initiatives, like, what does that really mean if you're only looking at one area of kind of group of people? And I know from recruiting at other companies that people love to go for the UC schools, and that's kind of like first train of thought. And it's so interesting to me because every time I tell someone I went to Pepperdine, everyone knows what that is. So it's kind of like, why are we not also in that pool of people?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's just, it takes a little bit more work, I think. But the funny thing also to know is, a lot of times in these conversations, if you do come with the experience, or at least come knowing what it is you want to get out of that interview or that call or that position specifically, the school doesn't even end up mattering as much. I think it's about the person and the experience that you bring. So if you're able to reach out and have a connection with someone and know specifically what it is you want out of that conversation, or what it is about that role or that company that interests you, they're not going to say like, oh, I'm happy to answer that question, but what school are you attending or did you graduate from? I think that sometimes there's just this, I don't know, this thought that like, oh, like if you went to this school, then you must be great as a baseline. So let's have that conversation. And I think that we all know Pepperdine is great, but I don't know if it's always at the first thought. I think they're like, oh, Pepperdine, that's a pretty good school. And then they're like, okay, cool. But I think that we just need to come with a little bit more of that gumption of like, all right, this is what I'm here for, and let's drive this conversation. And I think that typically tends to help.
Exactly. And both of you in your stories shared not just like here's the jobs, here's the things on my resume, but here are the people who helped me. I mean, Shelby, you had people help you and connect you. Will, you had Dorothy, you had others who kind of guided you in that process. On last week's call, we talked about a postdoctoral study that found that as many as 95% of the high-pay, high-skilled jobs in the United States go to people who had some sort of relational connection with the company that they were applying for. So it wasn't always just cold resume. There's a relational vetting process and even encouragement that goes into that. I think that's huge. And again, for all of us, everybody on this call, like we're all in this together, like for life, as Pepperdine students, alumni, community, like we're family. That's why it's so special for Shelby and Will for you guys to be joining us and helping us out. I love that. So yes, that's not to diminish your experience or what is on the resume, because that speaks volumes. But man, like, we have an opportunity to be extra community driven, extra relational, especially in that time. And I love seeing what it's done for both of you. You're both hallmarks of what that's capable of. Okay, so while people are filling in some extra questions, we did have one fluff question that we just have to ask. So, Will, Shelby, what is the guilty binge for both of you?
Oh man.
Yes.
There's so many. Will and I are the most guilty on the team of starting new shows and then like recruiting other people on our team like it's a cult to watch the show so that we can talk to them about it. We're very into a lot of the our non-scripted, so Love is Blind. We watched that. And then also we can get more serious and watch The Crown and all of that stuff. So I think Will and I on the team probably watch the widest variety of shows. Yeah, what would you say? I would say Love is Blind, in which, I mean, it's only been a month or so since it's ended, but like I feel like it's old news. Like, what's the new thing? And like Tiger King is like here and gone. Like that was a huge craze.
There's so much, and I think Shelby and I are like the worst kind of like Netflix watcher, because we watch all of this content and then we try to like recruit people who have no interest, and then we force them to watch it and they have so many regrets but are still like pleasantly surprised. So I feel like the newest reality show we have is Too Hot to Handle, which I think came out on Friday, and it is the most MTV-ish with a splash of VH1 reality show you can find. Maybe a little Love Island, and I am addicted, and it is so trashy. But I think we have like a lot of stuff. Like I think like we have The Outer Banks, which is supposed to be like an OC type show that we have that just came out. And we have Black AF, which is Kenya Barris, who created Blackish and Grownish and Mixedish. It's his like half-hour comedy that we have. So like we can go all over the place, and I think that's like one of the cool things about Netflix is I feel like we kind of forget genre sometimes. Like we can easily go like, oh, let's like talk about Grace and Frankie, but then like did you catch like that documentary on like, I don't know, criminal reform? So it's like all over the place.
I watch so many docs now. Like I was never like, oh, let me sit and watch a documentary, but then you just get so like hooked by these stories.
Yeah. Well, one that's fascinating for us, like from the outside, hearing like what you guys watch internally at Netflix. Like, what are the
we watch what you guys are watching.
All right. So people at Starbucks drink coffee. But is there that secret coffee? Is there that secret show or series or documentary? It's like most people haven't seen this, but us insiders, we know. What would you say?
Oh, that's so hard, because I think our struggle is after being with a company that creates content for so long, like no matter what company that is, you start to be more passionate about it than you think other people are. Like I can come home and talk to my girlfriend about a show that came out, and she's like, I'm not watching that. I'm watching The Office for the 13th time. And I'm like, why would you rewatch this show when there's 16 shows that just launched? And I'm telling you, like, I feel like we get so passionate that we're like wanting other people to watch them so that they can be renewed and we can watch them consistently. So like for me, I think that it's gonna be like sometimes like a Love is Blind, where we know that those shows are like good to us, but we don't know like how other people react to them until we like get on social media. And I think that's kind of what like reiterates a lot of it for me. Cause like example, The Outer Banks, like there might not be that many people even on this call who knows what that is. But so like if I was passionate about it, I'm like, but please watch it. Like I really want another season. And it's like really hard for us because we always know what new things are coming out, even if they're niche. But as a viewer, you kind of only know what is you're interested in. So like we may know everything that's coming, and you may only want to watch like Big Mouth. So
So do you? Oh, go ahead, Shelby.
Oh, and I also think that like our global content is like the secret sauce. Like La Casa de Papel, I think it's in the States, they call it Money Heist.
Mhm.
That show is huge globally. Also, what is it? Sacred Games out of India.
Elite.
Elite, yeah. So it's if anyone was a Gossip Girl fan, Elite is your show. It's like Gossip Girl and How to Get Away with Murder in one show.
Wow. That's a lot. So
Yeah.
do you look for that type of passion in your candidates? Does it help when a candidate comes in and is like, listen, you guys, I've watched Office 10 times through, but Elite, let me tell you what.
Of course, you're always going to want someone that works at Netflix that loves the product and uses the product as well. I think it shows that extra passion because you want Netflix to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, absolutely. Well, yeah,
We love it.
they need to love the product.
Yeah.
I think all of you are, and what we've discovered, like, so in America, sales is the most common job by far and away. Everybody's in sales, even if you don't think you're in sales. You got in talent acquisition, you are in sales. You're on both sides of sales, with people selling to you, but also you selling Netflix and trying to find the best people. And I think a huge part of that is passion, and developing that passion, watching those shows. So I think we have a lot of graduating seniors and students who are almost done with school. They're about to start watching a lot of Netflix. And my hope today is that when they start binge watching Netflix, they would think about the two of you and about your advice. So for the students who we have students who have jobs lined up, but we also have students who've had jobs and internships fall through, or who are just starting their career process. What advice would you give them for that hustle in these next, like Will, what you talked about, in these next 6 months? What does that look like? How should they act while they have Netflix on in the background?
I think trying to just build relationships during this time, because I think at least for Netflix, like, I know that companies are still hiring, Netflix included, but I think we're really trying to be cognizant of the environment. So we're very people first at this point. So we do have roles that are open, and we are actively hiring for folks, but we really want to make sure that people are taking the time that they need. And so we want to be cognizant of people in their personal lives and what they have going on. So there are always going to be roles that are posted externally that we have, but there are also roles that are posted internally that we're looking for that aren't necessarily public. So that's why I always tell people to just build relationships, try to find a mentor, or just dig around, because getting that information and building those partnerships with folks is what's really going to be important. I think a lot of the folks who get hired at Netflix are typically folks that maybe apply at first, but know someone, and so get that referral either before they apply, or get that referral on the back end to attach to the application that they've sent in. And so there's always kind of that tag team method of like, hey, like, I applied for this role, like, do you think that this will be a good fit? And then they end up referring you for it. And so I think that that's what's helpful, is trying to build relationships and not going into it always wanting there to be an outcome other than that relationship building. Because we can kind of sense when there's someone who specifically wants something at the other end. Because we can sometimes be great coaches, even if you don't get a job at Netflix. It's nice to have someone who kind of has a little bit of insight, and you never know. Like, I think a lot of the people at Netflix either are there because of, like, interviewing, not getting it, interviewing, not getting it, then getting it, or interviewing and then not getting it until a while later. Like, there are very few people who get a job at Netflix on the first try, outside of Shelby.
Shelby,
You know what? I think I did a manager screen for Aaron's assistant, and then they were like very briefly. So, but it was in the same period of time. But one other thing that I would add is, kind of take a break, step away from your resume for a bit, and just really reflect on your experiences and how you can repackage yourself. Because I think during this period of time, and as you're looking for a job, a lot of imposter syndrome can creep in. I think that I experienced that a ton, not only because I was able to get this position through connections as well as my experience. So I'm coming into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm working at Netflix now. Like, I went from like working at this small school, and now I'm at this huge global company. Like, what do I have to bring to the table? And I was able to really have an open conversation with my manager after I was hired and being able to like unpack my imposter syndrome. And she's like, no, like you were who we wanted. I didn't have coordinating experience in recruiting. A lot of my team members did, but my other experiences through my other positions were able to like kind of build this Frankenstein version of a coordinator if I grabbed a little bit from this job and this job. So really think about how your experiences make you qualified.
I love that. And especially about the imposter syndrome and protecting your mind. Like what you believe about yourself is everything. What you believe about your experience, and all that comes out with how you translate it. So what are the opportunities? Even like, let's just focus in. What are the opportunities at Netflix right now, and what sort of experience are you looking for?
That is going to be very role specific. So
Yeah.
very, very hard to answer. But I think that, so right now we do have, like, we haven't really changed our hiring practices for the most part. And since we are more relationship driven, like I think Shelby's example of like in the same length of time being talked to for multiple roles is very regular at Netflix. Like Netflix isn't necessarily the place where you apply for a role and then that's all you're seen for. Sometimes if someone's working on multiple roles or knows that their colleague is working on a similar role, they'll pass you along. So you may be having a conversation for an opportunity at Netflix versus a specific role. So I think that's always something to keep in mind too, is just because you don't get one thing at Netflix doesn't mean that you can never work there ever. Because different teams have different things. And I think that also one thing to note is like when you do have an interview, and if you don't get a call back or get that position, it's not the end of the world, because I think one thing that people forget when they interview is that that first call is a really big deal, because not everybody gets that first call. And so sometimes when you don't get the position, it's not because you're the worst candidate ever. It's just sometimes you don't have that one small piece that someone else may have that makes the team pop. But that doesn't mean that you aren't great and you may be able to succeed at another role at the company. So I think for us, the roles that we have, like, feel free to go to our job site. And one thing that I always say is to make sure you read the requirements, because our job descriptions are very much exactly what we're looking for. There's not really any fluff in there. So if you see a job description and it asks for some requirement, you're like, like I don't really know about it. I would definitely, like, if you still think that you're a fit, apply for it. And that can always be a question that you ask in a call. But that's definitely going to be something I always tell candidates, is to definitely look at those descriptions, because they have everything you'll need.
Excellent. No, thank you so much. And yeah, Netflix has a myriad of different opportunities, and I love that there's a relational framework that's kind of in response to that. It's not an equation you're looking for. It's something more, and that's great. And that's way more human. I think all of us would way rather work in a company in an environment like that. Anyways, it's one reason why Netflix is so excellent. So Shelby, you joined this team 7 months ago. And you're both in talent acquisition. And so like break that down a little bit for us. Like, this kind of piggybacks on Will's question, where he kind of alluded to, like, there's a lot of opportunities you guys know about where you might just have a conversation about an opportunity. But how does a talent acquisition officer, what are you looking at on both ends, both with the candidate and the prospect, and then on the back end? Like, explain a little bit more about your job.
So Will and I's job specifically, we coordinate candidate experience. So when candidates get to us, they've already been maybe screened by a recruiter first, and they're interested in having them speak to the hiring manager or bringing them on site for an interview. So we don't do as much of the sourcing and recruiting. So we're all about, okay, you're here. We're very interested in you. How can we make this interview the best experience that you've had? So that's what we really tend to focus on in our role specifically. So that can deal with, we have a candidate who is in Germany and we need to get them to LA this weekend, or anyone that has a competing offer, especially in our headquarters in Los Gatos. they're up with all of the other tech companies, and say there's a software engineer. They're not the ones that are like, oh, I'm dying to work for Netflix. They're like, I have 5
Yep.
companies that are after me. Like, what makes you like Netflix so great? And so it's our job to kind of sell the culture, sell the experience through their interviewing process from start to finish, and kind of being their point person throughout, kind of just guiding them, asking random questions. If there's something that they don't want to necessarily ask the hiring manager, we're the kind of person that when they come on site, they're like, hey, I have a question. It's not I'm, on and interviewing. We can kind of be that sense of comfort for them because we've kind of walked them through the journey.
That's great.
So it's just a little bit about our world. Different things pop up every day, different puzzles to schedule. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything to add, Will.
Oh,
yeah,
that was pretty much it.
Yeah, again, it's that the ability to talk to people from all different backgrounds and skill sets and experiences, because it's not, again, like both of you with your career journeys, it's not necessarily something linear. It is something that requires us to synthesize, our experience, our data, and our futures, and shape that. I think that's fantastic for both of you, and I love that you're both at a top company doing exactly that. So as we move forward with our students, and I've tried to get to as many of these questions naturally as I can, but to keep this conversation going for other students and alumni who would want to work at Netflix or at a place like Netflix, how would you say they reach out? What's the best way to connect with people? Is it like, do you respond to people via LinkedIn, or are you on Pep Connect? Or is it like, hey, you need to have like a friend of mine who's on Instagram, and like we both showed up at the same thing. What's that best way to build those relationships and create that community acknowledgement?
So I'm on LinkedIn, sometimes frequently, sometimes not. It's not consistent. It's typically what I check when all my other social media has. So I'm not as consistent there. But you can always reach out via email. Like, I will be able to kind of answer some questions there. I think with the current climate, it's a little bit hard to do a lot of phone calls, but I will try my best if you have some questions that you really want to dig into. But you can add me on LinkedIn. I'll definitely be more aware after this call because I just offered it up as an option. So I'll definitely be looking at it more frequently today. And you can also email me too. Like, I can offer that as an option if you have any follow-up questions that you weren't able to get to today, or you just had something come up that you didn't think of today. I think those options work. Especially considering, coffees and stuff aren't really on the table these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I offer the same. If you guys want to reach out to us or reach out to us together, we'd be happy to jump on a call with the 2 of you or the 3 of us. But yeah, I think that's probably the best way to reach out. And also, when you reach out, come with questions, specifics. I would love to answer all of the requests that we get that are like, hey, I really want to work at Netflix. But that kind of puts the ball in our court. I'm not going to go online and find a job for everyone, as much as I would love to. But come with specifics. I think that would be appreciated on our end. It'll kind of help prompt us to get you the help that you need.
No, and absolutely, and that's just it. It's about providing value. I think so often it's very easy for all of us to look at the ask and look at, oh, here's what I need, or here's what I'd like. But the relational thing, like we get more out of giving. For all of us at Pepperdine, you guys know this. I mean, the culture is freely ye received, freely give. That's on the seal, right? And so that culture of giving, even when we're reaching out to jobs, like, hey, here's something. I love Netflix. Here's something I really love about it. I think that this would be great. Or I had a question about this. You guys are looking for that next level because you're in a community that's all about providing value. It's all about building that relationship. And that's what's extraordinary. So let's see. We've only got a couple more questions left. So because you are at Netflix and we do have students in entertainment, could the next great Netflix content creator be on this call with us today? And if they were, how would they get into those paths that be into the content and the media side of Netflix?
First off, we can't accept any scripts. If we do, we have to send them to legal. There's this whole process. So unfortunately, if you have a great pitch, please don't send it to us.
Please don't.
Please. Will, I think because you work more in content, do you have more of an insight on how pitches happen?
A little. So Netflix is interesting because it's not a network, because it's a streaming service. So typically when someone pitches something to us and we like it, it goes straight into production. We don't do like a pilot creation and then go, oh, this looks like a great like pilot, so let's do it. And so because of that, I think pitches typically happen more externally coming in. I mean, obviously we do create things that are like on our own, but if we do have things that we partner with other studios for, it's going to come from the external meetings that we have. And so that would then mean that we would suggest like partnering with production companies. I think that Netflix is interesting, and the fact that it is both a tech and entertainment company. So there are multiple avenues on getting into the business. Like, you don't have to come from a specific background in order to work at Netflix. I mean, I came from an entertainment-based background, and Shelby came from higher education, and we work on the exact same team doing the exact same thing. I think that there are some still historically very entertainment Hollywood portions of the business just because of the nature. And so some of the roles do require you kind of to start at an agency or entertainment company with a little bit of experience working on a desk within the industry. And then that way you can kind of grow into the role that you're looking for. So that might be the more entertainment-y kind of thing. So being like an admin to an executive, or to a manager in production, or into a manager and like creative for this specific area you want to work in. Like if that's comedy, or, you know, children's content, or if it's reality or unscripted, that sort of a thing. And then that way you'll be able to come in, just because it's a very it's a very like high interest driven field to be in entertainment. And so being on the desk of someone in any company is a hard role to get. So Netflix is going to be a little bit harder, because they want to make sure that there are people who want to be with the business and not people who are just trying to like climb to the top. And so I think that it's going to be definitely one of those things where you do have to kind of chart a field. Like, you're going to have to be more cognizant of like where you want to go to get to those pitches.
Love it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, with that wonderful conclusion and well thought out plan, everybody, especially Will, Shelby, thank you so much for joining us today. I think I speak for all of us. You guys are awesome. I'm so proud to be a fellow Pepperdine alum with you because of how awesome you are. And we'll send out an email and post thanking everybody, and we'll send out, tell people how they can follow you, find you on LinkedIn, etc., and get in contact. But thank you for just sharing your life, sharing your wisdom with us, and being a part of this. So yeah, everybody claps in chat or live, whatever. You guys are awesome. And likewise, just like you've given to us, if there's ever anything we can do for you, this is your community, your family. Look at all those clap icons. That's great. Well done. You guys are getting used to Zoom. But I think that's all we have time for. I know you guys have to run off. So everybody, thank you for joining us here at the Seaver Speakers Series. This is a partnership between the Alumni Office and the Seaver College Career Center. And really, it's about all of us answering that question of what will we do with this time that's been given to us? How do we find those paths in life? How do we create the journey and do it together? I hope this was informative. I hope that this helps you in the next season. And let's keep the conversation going. So thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.
Hi, everyone.
Guys.